Alright, well good morning everybody. This is Chuck again, and we're going to do a different type of video today. I'm going to do one where I'm going to show you how to install Kali 2016. There's been some issues with people that have ran earlier versions of Kali, like 1.1, inside of VirtualBox. And the problem they have when they install 2016 is they'll download the ISO, they'll do the install, but when they connect to the ISO and they try to run it, they're going to get an error message that says this kernel requires an x86 or x64 CPU, but only detected a i686 CPU, unable to boot. Most of the time, that error message comes from a setting in your BIOS. The first thing you want to do before you install Kali 2016 is go into your BIOS. Now I can't show you how to do this here, I'm going to stop the recording, but go into your BIOS and you have to turn on virtualization. It's going to be in different spots for every BIOS, but typically it's under a virtualization tab, and it's a little check mark that says Intel VT or AMD. You have to turn on virtualization. Kali 2016 is built a little bit different, and it requires hardware virtualization instead of just software virtualization. So if you can't do it, if it's not in your BIOS, you're going to have to just stick with earlier versions of Kali. Okay, so that's one thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and install Kali here. I do have my 1.1 Kali that I still use, but I'm going to put 2016 on here. So I'm going to do a new, and I'm just going to call this one Kali 2016. Okay. Now I'm going to change the type to Linux. The version, for those of you who have been using VirtualBox, you'll notice that Kali is not in the drop down. Well, it is a build off of Debian, but I typically just choose other Linux. Now mine is 64-bit. Make sure you pick the right one. If I pick 32-bit and I'm trying to install 64, it's not gonna work. So I have the 64-bit ISO. I am running a 64-bit architecture. So I'm going to do a next. Now, I run a whole bunch of virtuals at the same time. I'd like to give it more memory, but I can really go, I'd like to give it 2 gigs, but I'll be kind of limited to the other virtuals I can run. So I'm going to give it just a gig for now. I'm going to do a next. Tell it to create a virtual hard disk. I'm not planning on exporting this out to any other virtualization technology, so I'm just going to keep it as a VDI, or VirtualBox image. I'm going to keep it dynamically allocated, which the hard disk will grow in size. It says up to a maximum of a fixed size, but it doesn't shrink, but I'm going to keep it dynamic. Now, with other OSs that you install, like 7 or Server 2008, it does a fairly good job at picking the size of your VirtualBox. It really stinks when it comes to Kali. If you keep this at 8 gigs, you'll be able to install it, but you're not going to be able to launch anything. So I'm going to bump this up to about 20 gigs. Oops, I don't want to do that. 20 gigs. I'm going to create it. Now that's going to set it right there. Now it's ready to go. Now the first thing I'm going to change before I launch it, I'm going to go into my settings. I'm going to go to network, and it defaults to NAT. Well, I want all of my virtuals, of course, to be able to talk to each other, but to be able to get out on the internet also. So I'm going to change this to my bridged adapter. And there is my NIC right there. Okay. Now, another thing to be careful of. Inside of a virtual, Kali will not, say if you do this off your laptop, Kali will not use a Wi-Fi connection. It won't do it. You can talk to your virtuals, but you're not going to be able to get out on the internet. And you're going to have some issues if you're running Metasploit and using things like auxiliaries, because they need to go out to the internet and grab some stuff. So if you're doing it on a laptop and you want to use your Wi-Fi, you need to get a Wi-Fi adapter. Just go out and buy one of the cheap USB Wi-Fi sticks. It can use that because that's hardware. It will not use your internal Wi-Fi adapter. It just won't do it. And you're going to have a problem during the install when you get to mirror images and things like that. So now I'm hardwired here. So there's my network connection. Okay, that's the only change I basically make right then. And you can always make it later. It's no big deal. Now I'm going to start it. As soon as you start, it's going to ask you for your startup disk. So I'm going to browse for my ISO file. Here's all my ISO images, and there is my Kali 2016.1. I haven't downloaded the .2 one, but that's okay. There's my 2016 part 1.1. I'm going to go ahead and do an OK. And I'm going to start it. There we go. This is going to take you to your grub screen. Now, you can always launch it live, but I actually want to install it. So I'm going to go down to my graphical install. You'll get some invalid arguments right at the beginning, but it's no big deal for now. There we go. Alright, I definitely want English. I'm in the US. American English for my keyboard. It's going to take just a minute to load the installer. Detect all of my hardware. Okay, now what do you want to call it? I'll keep it Kali. I don't need a domain name. Okay, what is going to be your password? What time zone are you in? And it's going to take a look at your disk. And go ahead and keep it as guided. Use the entire disk. That's going to be the disk. And I'm going to tell it put all of my files in one partition. I do not need to separate my var files or my home partition or anything like that, not just for a virtual. Okay. Says, all right, this is what it's going to come up with, my primary disk, and I'm going to have a swap disk. I'm going to tell it finish the partitioning and write the changes. Okay. Now it's going to tell you, hey, we're getting ready to make these changes. Change that to yes and do a continue. Now it's going to install the system. Depending on the speed of your machine, this may take 10 minutes, this may take an hour. So what I'm going to do for now, I'm just going to pause it until it finishes installing the system, until it gets to the next screen. When it gets to the next screen, then I'll go ahead and unpause it, and we'll be able to see where we go from there. So we'll be right back. Alright guys, so here we go. That part of the install is finished. Now it's going to take you to here where it's going to ask you about a network mirror. This is going to depend on if you're running Wi-Fi or if you're running cable. If you're running with a Cat5 cable, you can go ahead and use a network mirror. If you're using Wi-Fi, you're going to have to tell this thing no because it's going to fail. So again, I'm running Cat5, so I can keep this on yes, and I can do a continue. It's going to ask me, do I need a proxy? I'm not using a proxy, so I can continue through that. It's going to pick the closest mirror by itself. So I'm just going to let it go ahead and pick the mirror. It'll take a minute to configure. This is going to allow for updates. It'll take it just a second to get through this part. And there we go. It's starting to install the Grub bootloader. And again, this may take a couple of minutes. There we go. Now you will get something here that says it seems that this is a new installation. The only OS on the machine should be safe to install the Grub bootloader. Well, this is going to be inside the virtual itself, so it's perfectly fine to install the Grub bootloader. So go ahead and tell it to continue. Now, it says it needs to make it bootable. So you can enter the device manually, but there's no need to do it because the device is already there. Okay, so we're not going to install it in a new section. We're just going to install it on the virtual drive that we've already set up. So we're going to go ahead and continue that. It's going to finish the installation here. And there we go. It says it's complete. Now we just do a continue. It's going to do a couple more steps to finish it up, and then it's going to reboot your virtual. I'm going to show you a couple of more steps once we get into the virtual that you may want to change. Again, remember when you're setting this thing up, 2016, while this thing is finishing up, remember, go ahead and check your BIOS first and turn on virtualization because it may not be turned on. In fact, it's not turned on by default. Make sure you turn that on, and when you install virtual, there we go. When it comes up, you're either going to have Kali or you're going to have advanced options. I just kept mine at Kali and it's going to boot in. But again, make sure you turn on virtualization inside your BIOS before you start this install, or you're going to get that error message about the 686 processor. So you're going to go through all these steps and nothing's going to work. And then you notice that I went in and I changed my network adapter to use a bridge network. So I can talk to all of my other virtual machines as well as get out on the internet. Alright, so here we are. We're at the main screen. I'm going to type in my username, which is by default is just going to be root, and the password that I typed in when I set it up. And there we go. There is Kali 2016. Now, you noticed if you guys have used earlier versions of Kali, this one looks a little bit different. You know, we still have the cool Kali Dragon, but we did lose our tagline. I don't like the tagline being gone. But they have added some new programs in here. They finally put Burp Suite in here. You know, we have Maltego running. We have Beef XSS. You know, we have LeafPad. You have a tweaking tool over here. It'll take a little bit of time to get used to. You know, they are still running Iceweasel. In 2012.2, they actually got rid of Iceweasel and they put in a version of Firefox. I like Iceweasel, but everything else is the same with earlier versions. But I do like the way they drop these down, where they set these up a whole lot easier to find things. It's a beautiful OS and runs really, really well. But let me show you a couple other things that you may want to change. Now, first off, this is from my friend Paul. I'm going to open up my terminal window. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to edit our preferences. Okay, I'm going to go to colors. I don't like the transparent background. I'm going to turn that off. My background color is going to be black, but my text color is going to be a green. Find a nice green there. There we go. There we go. There you go, Paul. Because, you know, every hacker has to have a black terminal window with green text. So that is now my profile. So now every time I launch my terminal window, I have my green text. All right. Another thing you may want to do, if I go in now and take a look at my IF config, okay, there's my IP address. It pulled my net mask, pulled my broadcast address, and that's okay. But I typically, this is set to DHCP. I don't want my virtuals to change IP addresses because when I'm pinging each one of them, I want them to stay the same. So one thing that we can do is we can edit the interfaces file. Now there's multiple ways to do it, but for me the easiest one to do is use gedit, and it's in the etc folder, the network folder, and the file is called interfaces, if I can spell it right. And there it is. So here's my loopback network interface. I'm going to add some more commands on here. Okay, so we're going to turn this thing to static. So there's you know, a couple of ways that we can do this, but these are the commands that we pretty much want to type in. We're going to type in just, you know, allow hot plug, and then your Ethernet adapter, which is probably going to be ETH0. Okay, now interface or iFace, ETH0 iNet. To set it to static, just type the word static. Then I tab in and I type address and I do a space. Now, of course, I need to make sure I have an address that's free. So I'm going to go 1044 205. So that's my address. Now I need my net mask for that, basically your subnet mask, which in our case, even though it's a 10 address, it's 255.255.255.0. I need my broadcast address, which is 1044.255, and I need my gateway, which in this case is 1044.3. Okay. So that's that. I'm going to save the file, close it, and now we need to reboot our Ethernet adapter. So you do if down ETH0. Oops. Click in my little box there. Sorry about that. We're going to type if down ETH0. And sometimes you will get that it's not configured. sometimes it requires a reboot. In fact, let me make sure that I did save that file. Yes, I did. Allow hot plug. Sometimes I end up missing a line inside of there. Okay, that's perfect. So let's do it again. And sometimes, if it's not even configured, you can do a IF up. There we go. Okay. Now, I typically go ahead and restart my machine because sometimes it takes it a while to propagate. But I'll just restart my machine and I'll be good to go with the IP address that I gave it. That address is not going to change, and I can just mark that on my sheet with all my other IP addresses, and then I know what IP I can use on this machine to ping and do everything else. Let's see, let me go ahead and start Iceweasel. Probably have to do a restart to make sure I can get on the internet. But let's just test it. And again, you don't have to set it up. There we go. You don't have to set it up to a static IP. But to me, on virtual machines, it's a whole lot easier to set it up on a static IP. Then it's never going to change on me. So when I got multiple virtual machines running, I'll be able to get to it. So the install of 2016 is not difficult. Again, though, you do have to have the ability to turn on virtualization inside of your BIOS. That's going to be the biggest problem when you try to install this thing. Because if you don't turn it on, you're going to get the kernel requires an x86 or x64 CPU, but it only detects an i686. So again, most of the time it's inside of your BIOS that's your issue. So you just have to enable Intel VT or AMD V from the BIOS, depending on if you're running an Intel or you're running AMD. So make sure you turn that on. Then you will have no problems installing this thing. Another issue when it comes to Kali, since Kali does not use your Wi-Fi adapter, you can still use Kali if all you have is Wi-Fi on your laptop and you don't have an extra adapter. But if you start going in and you start using Metasploit, you are going to have some issues when it's time to run auxiliaries, because you're going to get error messages on your gateways, because some of them do require it to go out and pull something. So it's best to run it's best to run Kali in general on a wired connection, and then you can use everything you need. It's a beautiful operating system. It's a great system to run. Now that I've got this loaded and configured, I'll probably use this more than I use my 1.1 image. But I still switch between the two every now and again. Alright, so that is the installation of Kali 2016. Hope that helped you out. And again, you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I had somebody ask me about how to do an Ubuntu load. I'll do that. That's a very straightforward load. Nothing real special about it. I'll post a lab on a video on doing one of those too. So until then, enjoy it and have a great one.